Welcome to the Warp. This week I want to talk about space stations. Now this is a variant that was part of Cosmic Storm, the 4th expansion for Cosmic Encounter, and Cosmic Storm is generally considered the least popular expansion of the 6 so far. However, I do think it's an expansion that's worth owning, and part of the reason for that is the space stations. So let's talk about how they work, and then I'll cover what the 10 stations in the expansion do. At the beginning of the game, players are going to be dealt out these space station cards, one to each player, or if you have 5 or fewer players, you can be dealt 2 and then choose the one that you want. Then you're going to take the corresponding space station token and you'll place it up against a specific planet in your home system on the table. And as long as you have a colony on that planet, then you control that space station's effect or ability. Now, if another player takes over that planet or has a colony there, they do not get control of the space station. It's just deactivated. However, space stations can be traded in a deal. Let's talk about what the different space stations do. Let's start with Alien Outpost. When you receive this card, draw one card from the unused flare deck. Place the matching alien sheet next to this card, then remove that flare from the game. You can't use the alien if it has game setup or alternate win conditions. And as long as you have a colony on the planet, then you have the alien in addition to your normal aliens in the game. Having another alien is a great concept. This can be extremely useful, or at least occasionally good to have, depending on the alien. You are very likely to see this planet targeted, so getting a deal early and forcing players to share the planet with you is a must. If you have a really useful alien as part of the alien outpost, it could create a rare circumstance where attacking yourself as offense when drawing your own color, a worthwhile endeavor. Big Space Laser. As a main player, after you reveal an attack card, you may add 10 to your total if there are no allies on your side. This is a really nice space station to have. A plus 10 is great, but you do need to be on your own as a player to use it, and that's really when you need it. It's a good space station to hold on to for that final colony run to win the game, but that plus 10 will make others nervous, and you will be a target because of that. Colony Cloak. As the defense, after the hyperspace gate is aimed at one of your colonies or planets in the system, you may send one of your ships from this space station's planet to the warp. Then the offense must, if possible, target a different colony or planet in the system where he or she can have a legal encounter. So this station is a lot like being the worm. Interestingly, the Cosmic Storm expansion is the one that included the worm alien. It's unfortunate that they duplicated an effect on a space station, especially considering that there are only 10 in the box. That was a bad decision in my opinion. Personally, I never cared much for the worm, and even though the version included in Cosmic Storm is beefed up, it's still an alien I pass over all the time. As an effect, it's okay, but most of the time it's only helping you out in a ship count by 1 or 2. Who will target this home planet? Pretty much no one else cares about its effects. And you have to lose a ship to use it anyway. If you are playing with multiple space stations, you could use this one to protect another better one, but that's about it. Cosmic Energy Generator. After your side wins an encounter, place 2 tokens on this card. After your side loses an encounter, discard 1 token from this card. As long as there are 5 or more tokens on this card, it counts as a foreign colony toward victory. This is a neat station and I like it a lot. You can jump ahead in the colony count pretty quickly and it's not especially easy to push you back down. It's just slow enough that players might not pay too much attention to it. I think it's a nice original idea. Observation Platform. After alliances are formed during an encounter in which you are not involved, you may either retrieve 1 ship from the warp or draw 1 card from the deck. Not terribly original, but a useful effect nonetheless. It's nice to get something for not being involved, and if you are starved for ships or cards, you will have to weigh turning down an invite. But that's an easier decision when you can't gauge who will win an encounter. Here you know you can get something, and maybe it will be something great. Shield Generator. As an ally in a losing encounter, instead of setting your ships to the warp, you may place any or all of those ships on this planet instead. This is a pretty good one because it lets you ally with full strength, making it easier to win, and when allying with the defense, a good crack at getting rewards. Shock Trooper Shuttle Pods. During each other player's regroup phase, you may retrieve 1 of your ships from the warp. If you have no ships in the warp, you may instead choose 1 player to send 1 of his or her ships to the warp. This station also lets you be more reckless with your ship commitment because you have a steady engine for getting them back. You can also play around with the secondary effect of forcing others to lose ships. I try to negotiate with them for alliances or other future commitments by offering to not target their ships. Tactical Array. As the defense during the launch phase, you may draw 2 cards from the deck. Cards are usually the best resource, and this is a nice way to tap into that. You want to avoid it if you are just about to get a new hand, but that doesn't happen very often, so adding 2 more cards each time someone attacks you is a great effect. Temporal matrix. If you lose the first encounter of your turn, you may still have a second encounter as long as you have an encounter card in your hand. If you win the first encounter of your turn and choose to have a second encounter, you may place the Destiny card from the first encounter on top of the Destiny deck. I like this space station because it, 1, keeps you in the game if you were just unlucky about who you had to encounter in the first attempt, or if you were foiled by extraordinary circumstances. And 2, if you had a pretty easy time winning a first encounter, maybe you do want to attack that player again just because you know they don't really have anything better than what they had last time. If you just lost because you have a lousy hand, this is less useful, though you might be able to negotiate and steal better cards on your first encounter. You may also be able to trick players into thinking that this is your strategy on your first encounter and position yourself to win instead. Transdimensional Rift Relay. As a main player, after encounter cards are revealed, if you have at least one ship in the encounter, you may send up to 4 of your ships from this planet and add them to your ships already in the encounter. You may use this ability for encounters in any system. You have to really keep a good number of ships on this station's planet for it to be especially useful. When the totals are really close, you know you can boost it a little, which is nice, but with reinforcements in the decks, the odds of it working very often are pretty low. This is certainly not one of the better stations, though it can be useful if you're doing it for a kamikaze run or a big negotiate grab for more cards. So as I said earlier, I think that space stations are probably the best part of the Cosmic Storm expansion. The 25 aliens in there are a little hit and miss. Some are terrible, but some are really good. And a lot of them are useful even if they have an effect that's very similar to an existing alien. It's still worth having as an expansion. I just wish that there were more space stations in the box, and that's the big criticism of space stations. They only include 10, so even if you're playing with an 8-player game, you can't have 2 stations or even deal out 2 to each player. There's just not enough to go around. And part of that, I think, is because it has such a large cardboard footprint. They really couldn't fit that much on 3 or 4 sheets of punchboard in the box. I'm hoping that one day we will see additional space stations, and maybe coming up with a design that's a little bit smaller will address that so that we can get a larger variety. Now, some players have suggested that space stations replace moons, which we have not yet seen. I don't agree. While there are some similarities in the effects, they're definitely different enough that I look forward to seeing moons. First of all, the control of the space station doesn't move from player to player just because you've won an encounter. That's not the same with moons. You have to go after the moons. And in fact, you don't have control of your own moons in your own system until you consciously go after those moons. The other thing is that the moon effects are not known until somebody occupies them, but you pretty much know what everyone's space station does. You can't even flip the space stations over because the art is the same on the both. So they're widely known at the beginning of the game. And those are 2 of the main differences between moons and space stations. I think if we do see moons, that I'm hoping we'll get a much wider range of moon and moon effects, which will address the criticism of the space stations in Cosmic Storm. So that's where we are with space stations and Cosmic Storm. I think it's worth getting and checking out. It is a fun and easy to use variant, and I think it makes Cosmic Storm an expansion that's worth buying. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.